Ugh. Stop nagging. I'm exhausted, so you handle the kids yourself. Adam always dumped childcare responsibilities on me, avoiding any discussion about our children. Until then, I had completely believed that Adam was like this because he was busy with work. Yet, he had been meeting his mistress under the pretense of business trips. And that woman was to exact revenge on Adam, who had lied and cheated, and on Lila, who had committed this despicable act. I devised a plan. And the ones who helped me with this plan were my son Ethan and daughter Dakota. We'll go to Dad's company to greet those two. Then I'll submit the divorce papers. At the time, I didn't quite understand what they meant, but it seemed the children had something in mind. This incident triggered an unexpected change in my usually mild-mannered children. I'm Nadine, a 48-year-old part-time working housewife. Our family consists of my husband Adam, who's 2 years older than me, and 19-year-old twins, Ethan and Dakota. Adam works in sales and travels frequently for business, rarely spending time at home. Because of this, he's left all childcare responsibilities to me since the kids were young. I was a full-time housewife dedicated to raising our children until they were in 4th grade. However, I might have been overly involved in their upbringing. They grew up to be gentle and kind, but also became indecisive and struggled to assert themselves. Despite their good grades in middle school and getting into their first choice high school, when they entered high school, the world was hit by an epidemic, and everything went into lockdown mode. Perhaps because they couldn't attend classes properly, by graduation, they hadn't decided on their future paths and ended up graduating without pursuing either higher education or employment. They say they'll work part-time while figuring out what they want to do, but as their mother, I can't help but feel anxious. At times like these, I want to consult with my husband, but Adam, overwhelmed with work, shows complete disinterest. I had hoped to discuss this with him and get his cooperation in supporting our children. Today, Adam was unusually home on his day off, so I tried to bring up the subject of our children. Hey, dear. About Ethan and Dakota. I'm worried. Isn't there something we can do to help them think seriously about their future? But Adam responded dismissively with his usual indifferent expression. It's because of the lockdowns these past few years. We're not the only ones dealing with this, so if we leave them alone, they'll figure something out eventually. You're just too involved with the kids. You think so? When he points out that I'm too involved, I can't argue back. Still, in this day and age, child-rearing shouldn't be solely a mother's responsibility. I've been handling it alone all this time, so surely their father should help too. Deciding to take a firmer stance, I tried again. Maybe I have been too involved with the children. But isn't that because you've left all the child-rearing to me? Huh? What are you trying to say? Adam glared at me with an annoyed look while saying this. But I couldn't back down now. You blame it on the state of the world, but shouldn't we work together as a couple to support them, especially during times like these? So from now on. Before I could finish, Adam stood up, cutting me off with a loud voice. Stop nagging. I'm exhausted, so you handle the kids yourself. As he said this, he tried to return to his room, but turned around at the doorway and added one last thing. Oh, I'm going on another business trip starting tomorrow, so prepare my things. Does he think work excuses everything? I just sighed, not feeling like arguing back. At that time, I believed Adam's disinterest in the family was simply because he was busy with work. However, that night, something puzzling occurred while Adam was in the shower. Due to his job, Adam takes his smartphone into the shower room to handle any calls that might come in. Just as he was about to finish his shower, his phone rang, and he answered it. But his tone was different from usual. I was folding laundry right next to the changing room and couldn't help overhearing the conversation. Unlike how he speaks to work contacts, he was talking in an unusually cheerful, happy voice. I'd never heard Adam speak so brightly at home. I held my breath and listened carefully. Then I heard Adam calling the other person Lila. The conversation was about what to wear tomorrow and what to eat for lunch. Though he said he had a business trip tomorrow, was that a lie? It's possible he was using business trips as an excuse to meet his mistress. But I had no concrete evidence. Even if I confronted him, he would obviously deny it. If I pressed too hard, he'd probably just snap back with, "Who do you think puts food on the table?" I sat there clutching my head, wondering what to do, when the changing room door opened. I startled and my eyes went wide. In that moment, I accidentally made eye contact with Adam. Adam had a guilty expression and asked with furrowed brows, "Nadine, have you been there the whole time?" I didn't want to reveal the truth just yet. So I quickly lied. "No, I was in our room preparing for your business trip until just now, but did something happen?" "Oh, no, it's nothing." Adam's expression immediately relaxed, seemingly believing my lie. I decided to test him a bit by asking about tomorrow. "By the way, where are you going for this business trip? I should probably know where you're staying in case something happens." Adam furrowed his brows again and looked uncomfortable at my question. "Why are you suddenly asking that? You never ask about these things." Though I realized it was unnatural to ask such questions when I normally don't, I quickly thought of a reason. "I'm planning to visit your parents tomorrow. It would look bad if I didn't know where my husband was staying, wouldn't it?" When I said this, he scratched his head and seemed deep in thought. He was probably trying to think of an excuse or decide which hotel to name. "It's in Austin. A colleague arranged the accommodations, so I don't know the details. If anything comes up, just call my cell phone." It seems he managed to piece together a lie in his head. His hesitant speech gave it away. Though I noticed such an obvious lie, I decided to pretend I hadn't until I could get concrete evidence. The problem was how to gather evidence of the affair. Actually, Adam only gives me enough money for necessary living expenses. He manages all our family's assets. So I didn't have enough money to hire a private investigator. It seemed I would have to use my wits to figure something out. 3 days passed. I had been thinking about how to get evidence of the affair, but hadn't come up with any good ideas. That night, Adam returned from his business trip. "I'm home. Man, I'm exhausted. I'll skip the shower and go straight to bed." Saying this, Adam immediately lay down on the bed and fell asleep. If he had been meeting his mistress, his clothes from the 3 days would either be clean and laundered, or his current clothes might smell of perfume. After making sure Adam was asleep, I checked his bag contents and the suit he had just taken off. However, when I looked in the bag, I found clothes and underwear carelessly stuffed inside. I smelled the suit he had just taken off, but there was nothing unusual. Just when I thought there was nothing different from usual to use as evidence, I felt something like paper inside the suit. When I turned it over, I found 2 papers in the inside pocket. Looking at the paper in front, it was a divorce application. When I opened it, Adam's information was already filled out in the husband's section. And the other paper was actually a marriage registration form. Adam's section was completely filled out there too, and an unfamiliar woman's name was written in the wife's section. All other sections were also completed. This woman whose name was written here must be his mistress. As I stood there staring at the 2 papers in my hands, I heard Ethan's voice from behind. "Mom, what's wrong? You're staring intensely at what looks like official forms." "Oh. Aren't these divorce and marriage registration forms?" Ethan said this while peering at the 2 papers. When he saw the marriage registration form, his eyes widened for a moment. Lila Powell. "Is something wrong?" "No, never mind. You don't need to worry about anything." Does Ethan recognize this Lila's name? Even if he does, I shouldn't involve children in their parents' affair. While I was thinking this, Dakota, who must have overheard, came over and said, "Isn't that the name of the person Dad secretly calls from the toilet or shower?" I heard it in front of the bathroom. But I was hesitating whether to tell you, Mom. I was worried it might hurt you. So Adam hadn't just called her once, but multiple times. Moreover, he was making calls to his mistress from inside the house, not even considering what would happen if the children overheard. Although I couldn't get concrete evidence, this must surely confirm the affair. But I wasn't sure what to do next. Seeing my troubled expression, Ethan said, "Anyway, we should use these to our advantage. I saw this in a drama once. Apparently, if the person has properly filled out the necessary parts of divorce and marriage registration forms, anyone can submit them." "You mean submit these 2 papers to the office?" I never expected Ethan to suggest such a thing. "Yes. But before that, I'll go to Dad's company tomorrow to greet those 2. I wasn't sure what he meant by greeting those 2. I didn't understand the meaning of Ethan's words. Then, Dakota smiled and said to Ethan, "You mean Lila is that person you mentioned?" "That's perfect. Then I'll submit the divorce papers." "Do that. And submit the marriage registration too while you're at it. Dad's going to be so surprised when he finds out apparently, Dakota knows Lila's identity too." I was just stunned, unable to follow their conversation. "What do you mean? Do you have some connection to this Lila person?" "Well, I'll explain the details later. But that woman is the worst. You should divorce Dad if he's going to be with someone like her. Even if you 2 divorce, we'll stay with you, Mom." While I'd have to hear about Lila later, today's children seemed remarkably reliable. I had been worried about their future since they hadn't gone to college or found jobs. But looking at them now, they seemed to have their feet firmly on the ground. Indeed, I had been thinking about considering divorce if Adam was cheating. Perhaps we should have a proper discussion as a couple. However, Adam never takes anything I try to talk about seriously. So for now, I decided to trust Ethan and Dakota. That night, Ethan explained the details about Lila. So that's what it was. Lila was apparently a 28-year-old single woman working as a receptionist at Adam's company. As for how Ethan knew her, shortly after graduating high school, he was approached by an older woman at his part-time job. That was Lila. Lila had called out to Ethan while he was working at a cafe counter, saying, "Aren't you cute then?" Without any regard for others around, she reached out and stroked his face from his cheek to his jaw. Well, at the time, I thought she was kind of a cool older woman, so I ended up grinning. Then Lila got carried away and gave me her business card, telling me to call her anytime. After thinking about it calmly later, I didn't contact her, but then she started stalking me persistently. I had no idea this had happened. Come to think of it, that cafe where Ethan worked right after high school was near Adam's company. Though I thought it unlikely, I decided to ask just in case. Ethan. You didn't contact or meet with Lila after that, did you? Ethan made a bitter face for a moment at my question. His expression seemed to beg me not to ask anything more. Could something have happened between him and Lila? If so, that would be even more unforgivable than Adam's affair. Though I thought this, I didn't ask Ethan anything more. Even if I did, he probably wouldn't tell his mother. If this woman Lila had harmed Ethan, I certainly couldn't stay quiet about it. Come to think of it, Lila's surname. If my guess is correct, could she be that family's daughter? Oh yes, Ethan said he was going to greet those two tomorrow, so I have an idea. I devised a plan for tomorrow. Of course, I intend to tell Ethan and Dakota about this plan and get their cooperation. The next morning, Adam left for work in a good mood, either because he had slept well and recovered from his fatigue, or because he had enjoyed 3 days with his mistress. He had no idea what was in store for him. Ethan and Dakota called their part-time jobs to take the day off. After Adam had been at work for a while, Ethan headed to Adam's company, while Dakota went to the municipal office with the 2 papers. When Ethan arrived at the company, I began executing my plan. First, a message came from Dakota. It seems the divorce and marriage registration forms were successfully accepted. This message came to our group chat with Ethan, and Ethan responded with an OK stamp. Now it was Ethan's turn. Ethan messaged that he had arrived at Adam's company, and we immediately connected by phone. However, this wasn't for conversation, I would just listen silently. Ethan had put his smartphone in his chest pocket to let me hear what was happening. Wearing glasses and a mask, Ethan asked at the reception. Excuse me. I'd like to see Adam Wilson from the sales department. A woman's voice could be heard through the phone saying, "One moment please." After the woman called Adam on the internal line, Ethan spoke to the receptionist with a laugh. Hey, don't you remember me? Lila? As he said this, he probably removed his glasses and mask. Indeed, the receptionist was Lila. When Ethan asked this, Lila let out a strained voice. Ethan? Why are you here? What business do you have with Adam? She asked in a nervous voice. The next moment, I could hear Lila gasp. Your surname. Could you be? Yes. I'm Adam's son. I have some important business with Dad today. Though I couldn't see it, I could imagine Lila's pale face when Ethan told her this. She seemed to be trying to call the sales department again in a panic, but it was too late. The sound of an elevator could be heard, followed by Adam's voice. Lila. Who's my visitor? Ethan? Why are you at the company? What do you want? I could tell from his voice that Adam was also panicking. After all, his mistress was right there. Sorry, Dad. I had some urgent business, so I came to the office. You wrote out those divorce papers, right? Mom filled out her section and we submitted them today. Oh, and we also submitted the marriage registration with this lady here. Congratulations on your marriage, Lila. I could sense Adam and Lila were speechless through the phone. Adam shouted as if he'd caught fire. Who submits such things without permission? First of all, you need ID to submit a marriage registration as a proxy. Oh, about that, I used your passport, Dad. In our district, family members don't even need a power of attorney as proxy. What should I do? That was just... Adam started making lengthy excuses while trailing off. The story went like this. During those 3 days when he pretended to be on a business trip and was with Lila, they got into an argument over something trivial. The cause of the argument was simply that Lila wanted to put mayonnaise on her scrambled eggs, but Adam had already put ketchup on them. Despite such an insignificant matter, Lila wouldn't forgive him. Adam, wanting to make up quickly, went to the municipal office to get divorce and marriage registration forms to appease Lila. He wrote out the divorce papers, saying he would leave his wife, and made a quasi-proposal by saying, "Write your name on this marriage registration." Thanks to that, Lila's mood finally improved. For the next 2 days, they went around enjoying themselves after making up, and he completely forgot about the divorce and marriage papers in his suit's inner pocket. I never imagined those would be found. And there's no reason to submit them without saying anything. I love Lila, but I never intended to actually marry her. Lila finally snapped at Adam's self-serving excuses. I was just playing around with Adam from the start anyway. Now you're telling me we're married? How are you going to take responsibility for this? I was irritated hearing Lila's words. I wanted to give her a piece of my mind, stealing someone's husband and then saying it was just for fun. I wanted to say something, and since all the facts had come to light, I thought it was about time to make my entrance, so I opened the door. Oh, so that's how it was. Nadine. Adam was shocked to see me coming through the company entrance. Yes, I had been waiting outside the company while listening to everything over the phone. I approached Adam, who was standing there dumbfounded, with a defiant smile. Then I glanced sideways at Lila. Lila looked at me with a stern expression and said, "What's your problem? Coming in so suddenly." "Well, nice to meet you. I'm Nadine, who until recently was Adam's wife." "Lila? You're the daughter of that well-known mafia boss in this area, aren't you? The Powell family that operates under the guise of a construction company." "No, that's..." When I asked this, Lila shook her head with a pale face. I had figured it out when I saw the Powell surname on the marriage registration. On the surface, they're a construction company, my own family had even hired them for renovations. But in reality, they operate in a different world as the mafia. Though I was scared, I called the Powell office to execute my plan. When I set a trap by saying, "I'm calling from Lila's company," the boss came to the phone immediately. Thinking this was lucky, I told him everything, how Lila had been seeing my husband, how we divorced because of it, and how the marriage registration between Lila and Adam had been submitted. The boss was furious at Lila's inappropriate behavior and apologized to me. When I explained this, Lila replied with an even paler face than before. "What have you done? Papa's been saying that once I get married, I have to quit my job and continue the family business with my husband. I left home because I didn't want that." At Lila's statement, now it was Adam's turn to turn pale. "Wait a minute. Does this mean I have to take over the mafia family?" "Well, that's what it means." I couldn't help but laugh inside thinking about Adam becoming the next boss. Adam looked at Lila in a panic and shouted accusingly, "This is ridiculous. I didn't even know you were from such a dangerous family. You. Why did you keep such an important thing secret until now?" "Because I never thought this would happen. And if people knew I was born into our family, I wouldn't be able to keep working at the company either." Lila shouted back just as loudly. Given how loudly they were yelling at each other on the company floor, there was no doubt the entire conversation was being overheard throughout the office. After all, this reception area had an open ceiling all the way to the upper floors. Adam looked at me with pleading eyes, trying to salvage the situation. Listen, Nadine. I'll retract my relationship with Lila and withdraw the divorce papers right away. So, could you withdraw our divorce too? I promise I'll never cheat again. Please marry me again? I sighed in exasperation. No, I don't regret divorcing you. I can't forgive you for lying about business trips to cheat. Actually, I've been on the phone with Ethan this whole time, recording all the conversations. I'll be using this as evidence to claim compensation for the affair. Adam could only stammer in response to my resolute attitude. Meanwhile, Lila was trying to quietly slip away. Just a moment. You'll be paying compensation too. Don't worry. I knew you couldn't handle this alone, so I made sure to call your father here. What? You called Papa? Lila's eyes went wide with surprise. I had informed Lila's father, the boss, that I would be here. The boss had declared he would personally punish both Adam and Lila. He should be arriving soon, and just then, a black luxury car stopped in front of the company. A young man sitting in the back got out first and opened the passenger door. From there emerged a man in his late 50s wearing a crisp black suit. That must be the boss. He entered the company entrance and approached us. I apologize for keeping you waiting. You must be Nadine who called? Yes. And this is Adam, who married your daughter today. Please, nice to meet you. Hey, Nadine. When I introduced Adam to the boss, Adam showed a strained expression and broke into a cold sweat. The boss directed a stern gaze at Adam. So you're Adam. I assume you've heard by now, but since you've married Lila, you'll be taking over our family. Please, anything but that. I still have 2 underage children. Adam responded fearfully as the intimidating boss got in his face. However, no matter how he struggled, there was no escaping this situation, and the boss replied in an even more menacing voice, "What? You were messing around with my daughter while having such important children of your own? As a fellow father, I absolutely cannot forgive that." Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm so sorry. Adam trembled as the boss grabbed his chin. Seeing their father in such a pathetic state, Ethan said with a look of disgust. Dad, we don't mind. Just pay Mom the compensation for the affair, and we'll figure out our future on our own. Ethan and I are going to use the money we've saved from our part-time jobs to go to college. We're not counting on your support anymore. Dakota had rushed over from the municipal office at some point. Both of them showed such confident attitudes even in the presence of the Powell boss. They seemed nothing like their usual mild-mannered selves. I was amazed at Ethan and Dakota. What's gotten into you two? Showing such quick thinking during this incident and displaying such confidence I've never seen before. When I asked this, Ethan looked away slightly and answered. Well, I've been through some things, because of Lila over there. No, stop. At Ethan's meaningful words, Lila hurriedly tried to stop him. But the boss, who seemed to have realized something, stopped the interrupting Lila and said, This sounds significant. Would you mind telling us about it, regardless of Lila? Yes, certainly. After agreeing, Ethan explained in detail what had happened after Lila approached him at his part-time job. The truth shocked even me, his mother. After giving Ethan her contact information, Lila persistently stalked him when he wouldn't contact her. I had heard this much from Ethan yesterday, but the problem was what happened next. When Lila kept pursuing him so persistently, Ethan reluctantly contacted her, and she told him to come to a certain place. When Ethan hesitated, Lila started crying dramatically, so he couldn't refuse. When Ethan arrived at the place Lila specified, it turned out to be her apartment, where she lived alone. When Ethan rang the intercom, Lila grabbed his arm and forcibly dragged him into her room. Ethan tried to escape, but she threatened to call the Powell family if he didn't comply, so he had no choice but to submit to whatever happened. Afterward, he figured out where she worked from the business card she had given him, and by threatening to expose her at the company, he was able to end their relationship. That's why I knew Lila was the Powell family's daughter and that she worked at Dad's company. When I found out she was dating Dad later, I wanted to get revenge for what happened then. It was really painful for me to hear this. No, the boss seemed even more shocked than I was. He looked at Lila with a pale face and shouted in a rage. "Lila, what have you done to an ordinary, underage boy? Never mind Adam, how can I ever apologize enough to Nadine? You shameless girl." Grabbed by the collar by the boss, Lila still talked back without flinching. As expected of the boss's daughter. "Well, there are only old men at our company, and I wanted to date young guys. But I've never had normal relationships like regular women, so I didn't know how to approach them properly. Then when I was feeling down after being rejected by Ethan, Adam happened to make a move on me at work. What a coincidence that the one who approached her after being rejected by the son turned out to be Ethan's father. Since I had no lingering attachment to Adam, I could laugh at this story as if it were someone else's problem. At least I'm glad Ethan cut ties with Lila completely." The boss sighed with an expression that seemed to say how pathetic this all was. Then he looked at me and bowed deeply. "I truly cannot apologize enough for all the trouble we've caused you. I am deeply sorry for everything." The men who appeared to be family members around the boss all bowed simultaneously. I felt rather embarrassed and didn't know how to respond. Though slightly flustered, I gathered myself and addressed Lila. "Of course I want compensation for the affair with Adam, but more than that, I absolutely cannot forgive what you did to Ethan. From what I've heard, there was clearly no mutual consent, so as a mother, I'm going to press charges against you." What Lila did was clearly against the law. No, it's not just a legal issue. A mother's anger at someone who harmed her son won't easily disappear no matter how much compensation is paid. If I could, I'd like to get revenge with my own hands. As I glared at her with an expression full of anger, Lila started making excuses nervously. "But, I just wanted a boyfriend. I just thought Ethan was my type, but..." "Fool. Lila, you're in the wrong. You need to atone for your crimes and make things right." Scolded by the boss, Lila became completely subdued. By now, a crowd had gathered around us. Well, that's understandable given this commotion. It seems some employees had been watching the whole thing from early on. This incident will probably spread throughout the company and be reported to upper management. Adam and Lila will surely be fired. Either way, since Adam is going to become the Powell family's successor, we already know he'll be leaving the company. After this commotion ended, I headed home with Ethan and Dakota. I was curious about what Dakota had said about going to college, so I asked them both. They answered, "Dakota and I were talking, and after this incident, we've become interested in work that resolves family troubles. So we're going to take the law school entrance exam to become lawyers." I had wanted to go to college before, but because I didn't have a satisfying high school experience, I couldn't see my future clearly. So I thought I'd save money through part-time work while looking for a goal. So they had been thinking things through properly. It seems I had been worrying too much. Realizing this, I decided to trust my children and support them from behind the scenes from now on. Later, I heard Adam officially became the Powell family's boss. Or so I thought, but it seems that was just a title. Lila's father, who isn't much older than Adam, still appears to be going strong. This became clear through Powell's official social media. The former boss still handles all major activities, while Adam isn't shown at all. After a while, I received a phone call from Adam in a weak voice. "Help me. I'm just doing odd jobs for the family now. The successor title is just for show, the former boss and underboss are really running the family. I get pushed around by scary family members every day, and who knows what they'll do to me if I don't follow orders." Adam cried while saying this. Come to think of it, I saw on their official social media that since they're officially a private company, the underboss who serves as COO handles all the responsible work. According to Adam, the former boss has strictly told him that in this day and age, not every world is financially affluent, and households should practice frugality as their motto. By the way, although I pressed charges against Lila as his wife, she only got a fine since it was her first offense. However, her father, the former boss, punished her for her past actions by sending her to train at a church. The boss said she needs to be retrained there in body and spirit. If that's the case, Lila probably won't be coming back for a while. I hope the couple properly reflects on their evil deeds. 10 years have passed, and Ethan and Dakota have become fine lawyers. After passing the bar exam, they worked at law firms for several years to gain experience. Now they're going to establish their own private practice together. They plan to primarily handle family and domestic trouble cases, which was their goal. I also obtained a paralegal certification to help them. I plan to support them with administrative work so they can focus on their work as lawyers. Both Ethan and Dakota are married now and doing well in both their private and professional lives. I've had many worries about child rearing throughout the years. But now I feel those struggles weren't in vain. Eventually, Ethan and Dakota will have their own children and face their own child rearing struggles. That's how life repeats itself. I think that's what real family is all about.